Well, as some of you know, quite often during the summer, Ruth would make a pilgrimage down to Cape Breton. And when she would come back, she'd have our grandson Sam, and he'd spend most of the summer out with us. Now, just one particular time, she went down, and she and Faith went down, and when they came back, Ruth had Faith, Sam, and 6 live chickens in the back of the truck as well. Well, we were not prepared to house 6 chickens, 2 turkeys maybe, Sam and Faith, but not 6 chickens. So upon this discovery, I went to a place and ordered up some lumber so that we could build something. And sure enough, after a couple of days, I came home and there was a bunch of lumber in the yard ready for us to become Mr. and Mrs. Chips and build a chicken coop. Well, I can honestly tell you that I had a divorce lawyer on speed dial the entire time Ruth and I were building this chicken coop. But when we got everything down and got ready to go, we made an awful discovery. While some of the lumber was just fine, other pieces were warped, wowed, had gouges out of it, and some of the 2x4s looked like they still had bark on it, and I'm sure that if I had planted them, they would have sprung roots and grown. Well, Ruth looked at me and held up one of the warped 2x4 that was gouged and still had bark on it and said, "JD, look at this one. We can't build anything with that." Actually, what she said was, "You can't build anything with that. The only thing that board is good for is starting a fire." Well, we ended up putting the worst ones to the side, bringing them back and getting more lumber, this time from a different dealer. You see, we wanted to build something that was safe and secure for these chickens. And our building would only be as good as materials that we had. And I guess that brings us to our Bible story. The words hang out there like a bell just rung. Who do you say I am? Well, says Nathanael, some say that you're John the Baptist. And there's an awkward silence. Andrew adds, well, others say you're Elijah. Still others say that you're Jeremiah or one of the prophets, chimes in James and John. No, Jesus says. The people who say these things haven't traveled with me day and night for the past 3 years. My question is for you. Who do you say that I am? And again, silence settles on the horseshoe of followers. Nathanael clears his throat. Andrew ducks his eyes. James and John just look at each other. Nobody speaks up. Nobody but Peter. Peter steps forward, and as he does, he remembers the past 3 years. All the wonderful things that he has seen and experienced. All the times that he has asked himself the very same question, who is this man that I am following? Who is this Jesus who has called me? He remembers that day and name. He asked it of himself then. Most people stand quietly at funeral processions, mouths closed, hands folded, reverently silent. Not Jesus, no. He approached the mother of the dead boy and he whispered something in her ear that made her turn and look at her son. And when she did, she didn't object. Instead, she signaled to the pallbearers, she instructed them, wait. And Jesus walked towards the boy, eye level with the corpse, and he spoke. Not over it like a prayer, but it was like a command. Young man, I say to you, arise. And he did. With the tone of a teacher telling a student to sit, or the authority of a mom telling her kids to get out of the rain, Jesus commanded the dead boy not to be dead anymore. And the boy obeyed. Cold skin warmed. Stiff limbs moved. White cheeks flushed again. The men lowered the coffin, and the boy jumped up into his mother's arms. Jesus gave him back to his mother. Then there was another time. There's that storm. It was beautiful when they left, but it soon changed. Lightning streaked the sky, and waves 10 foot swelled and broke. And they battled that storm for 9 hours. But just when they were about to give up hope of ever seeing shore again, they saw Jesus, appearing as if a ghost and walking on the water. Peter remembers running on the water towards Jesus. He remembers the fear that took his heart, and how he remembered, and then how he began to sink beneath the waves. And remember Jesus' hands plunging beneath the water to save him. And remembers Jesus commanding the storm to be still. And it was. Stepping forward, Jesus proclaimed softly but firmly, I believe. I believe you are the Christ, the Son of God. And there's stunned silence as Peter gives voice to the very thing they had all been struggling with. They turned to witness Jesus' reaction to the words that they'd all struggled with and were afraid to utter openly. And as they do, they are stunned again by what Jesus says. Blessed are you, Simon, son of John. For this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter. And on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. And my friends, on this day, Jesus Christ is asking you the very same question. Who do you say that I am? Who do you? Not what your friends say, not what your boss says, not what your parents say, not some lame author who wrote a book, not what he says. Who do you say that I am? And as you think of that question, look at moments of his life. Midwifed by a carpenter. Born of a peasant girl. Water changed to wine. 5,000 fed from a lunch meant to feed a young boy. The blind who see, the crippled who walk. Lazarus commanded to live again and does. And most of all, the grave of a crucified man, guarded by soldiers, sealed by a rock. And yet he rose again. What do we do with these moments? What do we do with them? Well, we can scoff at them. Herod did. At the day of his trial, Herod had Jesus dressed up in an elegant robe, and he and the soldiers made fun of him. We too can look at these Bible stories and make fun of them as myths or parables or the writings of simple, superstitious people, and because of that, our lives will continue until an end. No eyes will open, no hope will be received, no lives will be changed. We can reject them. The chief priests and the religious leaders cried for his death. They chose Barabbas and said they had no other king than Caesar. We can do this. We can do this. We do it all the time. Choosing work, or money, or pleasure, or any other things rather than worship. and we can ignore them. Pontius Pilate did. He saw that Jesus had done nothing wrong, but at the end of the day, he just washed his hands of the matter. We can do that too. There are many people who might refer to themselves as Christians but live as atheists. I know of one minister who does that. What they do, what they want, and whatever they say they believe in gets ignored for whatever is most convenient or easiest at the time. And if we do, if we respond to Christ's life with mockery, rejection, or just ignore it altogether, well, we won't be struck by lightning or anything like that, but we will live out our lives with nothing to inspire us to be better than we are, nothing to motivate us to do good and resist evil, nothing to comfort us in times of sorrow, or give us hope when our lives are in crisis, other than perhaps a celebrity talk show host exposing the culture's latest fads. Indeed, there'll be no bolt of lightning out of the blue, but our lives will slowly become just a series of days, slowly winding down to an end. But if we respond to Jesus with affirmation instead of indifference, if when we are faced with the question, "Who do you say that I am?" we respond, "I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God," you will find that Jesus' response to Peter those many years ago will be the same answer that he gives to you. "Blessed are you, James, son of Evan. Blessed are you, Ruth, daughter of Miriam. Blessed are you, Tom. Blessed are you, Lynn. Blessed are you. And I tell you, you are James. I tell you that you are Ruth. I tell you, you are Tom. I tell you that you're Mary. I tell you that you are Lynn. And on you I will build my church. And within you I will build a church. And the gates of Hades will not overcome it." When we respond to Jesus with our faith, that is something that he can use to build things with. Build your character to the point where you can resist temptation, where you struggle to do the right thing even if it's hard or expensive or inconvenient. He will use that faith to build your life full of love and compassion and forgiveness, a life of significance and purpose. He will use your faith to build something beautiful, something holy, something that will outlast your life. He will use your faith to build his church, not an institution, not a building of brick and mortar, but a community of people dedicated to living a godly life and caring for each other. As Peter said in his first letter, you also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house, to be a royal priesthood, offering spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. But my friends, this can only happen if you get to know Jesus. Who do you say that I am? If you shrug and say you're a stranger because I don't know you, we can do that. You might say, well, Reverend Kennedy, my mother says, or the guys at work says, or I read this book that says, and I say, no. Listen to the question. Who do you say that I am? Get to know Jesus. Spend time with God's Word. God's Word reveals the truth that we need to grow in faith. It gives us the materials that Jesus can use to build that church. Spend time with God's people. God's people provide you with the support that you need to grow in faith. Spend time living your faith, doing the Bible tells you to do. Circumstances provide the environment that we need to practice our faith. If you study and apply God's word, connect regularly with other believers, learn to trust in God in difficult circumstances, then I can guarantee you that God will begin building something new, something powerful, something glorious in your life. As we prepare to end our time together, I leave you with the words from Psalm 127, the words that we all said together. Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Give to God your mockery, your apathy, or your rejection, and your life will build something temporary that will come to an end when you do. Indeed, your labors will be in vain. But give God your faith, and he'll build something that will be a blessing to you, in your family, in your community. That will be a blessing to this world, in this world and in the next, to which I can only say, thanks be to God, and amen.